As of recent, Halo Infinite has gotten pretty damn good, and it seems like the public reception of the game has started to shift once again to a more positive light. But how exactly did we get here, and what exactly has happened to make people start to like the game again? Well, that's what we're going to go over today. However, before we get to that, we've got to start at the beginning, and I mean the very beginning. Anyway, if you do enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new here, as I really do appreciate it, and it really does help the channel out. Now, without wasting any more of your time, let's jump straight in. November 15th, 2021. Halo Infinite officially releases in its beta stage. Available on Xbox One, Xbox Series S and X, and also available through PC on Steam and the Xbox Game Launcher. Overall, the game is received pretty positively. Especially for a beta, it seemed to have a lot to offer, and even reached the milestone of over 20 million players at launch, which means it is the most successful Halo launch ever. This wasn't exactly surprising, as the game was free to play and available on more platforms. But regardless, this was pretty impressive and also very nice to see. However, things seemed almost too good to be true, and content seemed to start flowing very slowly. December 8th rolls around, which is supposed to be the game's official launch, and the only thing added is the addition of the campaign, with nothing else really major to talk about. Which kind of went to show that it was never really released in a beta, it was just the multiplayer and the campaign being released separately. With the game having its fair share of issues and content being drip-fed to players, interest overall started to dwindle. It also didn't help that Big Team Battle, one of the main modes in the game's launch, didn't work for about 2 months straight and was almost impossible to find matches in. Even the in-game events felt somewhat lackluster, and overall there just wasn't much to do. This isn't to say it was necessarily bad, but with all the competition in the live service market, people just moved on to other things. It also didn't help finding out that Season 1 would be 6 months long, and then when we finally did get Season 2, it didn't turn out the best. It added a couple of new maps, Breaker and Catalyst. We also got a couple of game modes, one of which being Last Spawn Standing, which was some weird battle royale gun game hybrid thing that wasn't very popular. And overall, considering we had to wait a whopping 6 months for this new season, it felt extremely lackluster. It felt like a lot of promises were being broken, and overall, Infinite's future didn't seem too bright. But hope was on the horizon, we just didn't know it yet. During September, 343 showed off a brand new roadmap for the future of the game, and this was met with a very mixed reception. This showcased the winter update and the upcoming third season, which had been delayed by another 4 months. A lot of people had a very negative response to this, and to be fair, I also fit into that bracket at the time. But little did we know, the winter update would be quite possibly the best thing to happen to Infinite in regards to how its live service was handled. The update itself brought the long-awaited arrival of Forge and Co-op campaign, as well as some additional maps and other things. It also improved the challenge and XP system, and you also now got match-based XP, which was such a huge change for most people. And although the game still felt like it had a lot that was missing, this did feel like it was finally getting back on track. It also helped that with the winter update, the consistency of content was much better. We ended up getting the customs game browser, cadet coatings were finally on all cores, the flow of events was also consistent, and now they didn't force you to play game modes that you really didn't want to play. It definitely felt like things were finally on the right track. One of the biggest things that happened during the winter update too was the addition of the Community Collection playlist. This was a regular arena playlist made up of various different Forge maps made by the community, hence the name, and this is something that a lot of people wanted and didn't expect it to happen so soon. The maps included in the playlist were great, and it was such a nice breath of fresh air. Although this was technically a 4-month extension of the second season, the winter update did truly feel like its own thing, almost like it was a season 2.5. I mean, it even had its own battle pass and everything. The winter update battle pass is also still free, by the way, so if you didn't play during that and you're thinking of hopping back into the game, that's still there. There's 30 tiers of cosmetic rewards for you to unlock. The winter update on its own definitely wasn't enough to save the game. It's not like players started to flood back with the arrival of the update or anything. However, like I said, it did feel like a very welcome change, and it was clear that things had started to improve. March 7th rolls around and the third season of Halo Infinite Echoes Within finally releases, bringing new sandbox additions, an expanded narrative, more maps, another mode, and more. It was definitely one of the biggest and best content drops the game had, and all of the content added was very welcomed. After over a year, we finally had new additions to the sandbox, and although yes, it was just another kinetic precision weapon and a piece of equipment, it was still nice to have. And a lot of people genuinely seem to like the bandit rifle. During this season, 343 did make some changes to other established modes, like with regular big team battle, the bandit rifle eventually became the starting weapon. And to be fair, this is a change that definitely had a mixed response, but I'm a fan of it. I think the bandit just feels like a bit more of a casual weapon and definitely helps with BTB to make it feel like more of a casual experience. Getting back on track though, 343 definitely handled Season 3 really well. A lot of the stuff they've done with the winter update still carried over here. The pacing of events and content overall was much better. I still have my fair share of issues with Season 3 and I feel like there's a lot of things they could have done to improve it in some regards. For example, I still felt like Fracture events were extremely lackluster. But Season 3 did have some big changes of its own, one of which was the reduction of FOMO by making almost every previously released store bundle permanently available through the customization menu. And for people like myself that care quite a lot about the customization, this was a very welcomed change. It also seemed like a good handful of the bundles had major price reductions, so some of them weren't as overpriced as they were when they initially released. The third season also provided us with Big Team Heavies, which was a variant of Big Team Battle that felt much more like a Big Team Battle. The Community Collection also received more content, which was nice to see, and Season 3 again was just a good sign of things to come. We are now a couple of months into Infinite's fourth season, Infection, with less than 60 days remaining. And in a lot of ways, it's felt like a huge improvement in 343's approach to live service, and it's also been a massive improvement for the game. The release of the season itself brought some new maps, Scar and Forest I think is the nicest looking map the game currently has. It also brought the long awaited addition of Infection, which is pretty fun, although I do have my issues with that too. I'm just really glad to see it in the game. We also got the addition of the career rank progression system, which again a lot of fans were happy about. The season itself also brought some additions to Forge. We had new objects to place. There was new equipment, the Threat Seeker and the Quantum Translocator. The pacing of everything so far has been much better. It seems like we have a week without an event, then there's an event on for 2 weeks, then there's a week without, and so on and so on. But overall, it almost feels like the game always has something to offer. Even in those weeks where there isn't an event, there might be some new additional mode or playlist, or a returning playlist for fans to jump into. But the biggest addition to Season 4, the most popular thing that is added so far, is definitely the Squad Battles playlist. This is very similar to that Community Collection playlist we mentioned earlier on, but instead of being arena, it's more of a classic BTB. It's 8v8 as opposed to Infinite's 12v12 Big Team Battle, but it features various Forge-made classic maps. We had Valhalla and Zanzibar, although yes, they are under different names. There's also Exile, Waterworks, and Rat's Nest. Although this playlist wasn't necessarily a new game mode, if anything, it's literally just BTB with less players. You could tell it definitely grabbed people by the nostalgia and dragged a lot of players back in. It definitely seemed like it's been very positively received, as I saw a lot of people talking about it upon its launch, and people are still talking about it even now. After over a year, it seems 343 have finally found their footing in regards to handling a live service Halo title. And although yes, there is still a lot of things that myself and a lot of other players want to see, some PvE modes would go a long way. It would be cool to see some new additions to the sandbox, whether that be more weapons and vehicles. But I think it's safe to say all these things will come in due time. We even know that 343 have already announced you will be able to make your own PvE maps in Forge mode. I have a lot of faith that 343 are going to turn things around, and in fact they kind of already have. If you haven't played Infinite in a while and were considering it, I don't think there's any better time to do so other than now. The game has undergone so many positive changes, and there is so much more to do than there was at launch. But one question does still remain after everything: is it too late? And with that, I think it's time to wrap things up, but I do have a couple of questions for all of you. If there was anything, and I mean anything, that you could add to Halo Infinite, what would it be and why? And do you think 343 still has a chance to save the game and redeem its reputation? But anyway, that's all from me. I'll catch you all in the next one.